In this episode of Detroit Performs, a Detroit native quilts patterns filled with rhythms and energy, an iconic textile designer, and how something is made is just as important as what's being made. It's all ahead on this edition of Detroit Performs.
Funding for Detroit Performs is provided by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to Detroit Performs. I'm your host, DJ Oliver, and today I'm at the Birmingham-Bloomfield Art Center, which has been connecting art to children and adults in the Detroit region since 1957. The center also offers art classes, exhibitions, and other creative experiences. First up in today's show is Detroit native Carole Harris, who manipulates fiber and thread to create her beautiful quilted works of art.
I love beautiful fabrics. I love the feel of them, the smell of them even. All my quilts, I feel, are my children, and I have no favorites. Each one, when I'm doing it at that time, is my favorite. I grew up in Detroit. I've been here all my life. First fiber work I can remember was embroidery. My mother taught me embroidery, and I can remember going to the 5 and 10 cent store to buy those embroidery floss, but it looked like a color wheel to me. That's my memory of it, all these colors just lined up one next to another. So I think that's kind of where it all started. And right now I'm working with hand stitching and embroidery a lot, so I'm going back to the very first kind of stitchery that I ever learned. You get 3 layers. That's what makes a quilt: a bottom, a middle batting, and a top. And you stitch those 3 together, you've got a quilt. Now, what you do with it after that is where the real creativity comes in. I like to work with color. I like a lot of color. But every now and again, I will challenge myself to do something with no color, black and white. I get a lot of joy out of the making, how I put these pieces together. Now, it's all very random, but they should work nicely together. I don't want to place one that's got, because I'm trying to create energy and rhythms, I don't want to create one that's very much like it right next to it. So this doesn't have the same kind of dynamics or dynamism as, say, this one does. High contrast, very high contrast. I love music, and I like the rhythms of music. I try to recreate high energy and the flow of music sometimes in my work. So I often am inspired by everything around me. The inspiration or the final product often does not necessarily reflect literally the inspiration, but it's just a starting point. And for me with fabric, it's always the fabric that is the beginning. And I'm never really at a loss for ideas because I have all this fabric around me, and I can just go to it, pick one up, or it will call me, and I will pick that one up, and it will be the beginning of something, and that's how work starts. So maybe we want it to go together in a sort of a chevron pattern. The series that I'm working on right now is a great departure for the kinds of quilts that I made for maybe the last 30, 40 years. They've been sort of inspired again by looking at these houses and architecture. And I don't want to say ruin porn, but you see the marks that time has made on the landscape, whether it's natural landscape or man-made. And those marks are very beautiful, and they tell stories about the lives of those buildings and the people that have used those buildings. And I liked what the layers revealed. So I am now making holes and things so that you can see the layers. So the layers reveal something else. And then layering pieces one on top of the other in a way that you can see more than one fabric, each fabric being a part of a story. It's kind of like an onion, you peel away, you keep peeling, each layer is a little bit different than the one preceding it. I think of them as artifacts, and it tells a story of time and identity sometimes. I think that art is a collaboration between the maker and the viewer. And I make it, I may be thinking one thing and I see, but my experience is totally different from yours. And so what you bring to it is going to help you in interpreting this work and responding to it. Maybe it's telling your story. Maybe there's a layer that's a little bit fancier than what you see on top. I think the thing that I'm mostly saying is don't always be so concerned with what's on the surface, because that's not the whole story. That if you look beneath the surface, whether it's people, buildings, whatever, there's a lot more that's being revealed than what you see at first.
You can learn more about Carole Harris on DetroitPerforms.org. 92-year-old Ruth Adler Schnee is not only a pioneer in defining a modern look of architectural interiors, but also in redefining post-war America's sense of public space. Here, we showcase her successful career.
Go outside and see the sunset, and see the brilliant reds and blues and purples, and look at the ocean or the lakes around here that change color from blue to green sometimes, and then bring it into your house and enjoy it. There's no such thing as making a mistake in color.
Design is all around us. We've become so used to it, we often ignore it. Who made the patterns in the carpet at the airport, decided the color of the curtain at the hospital that separates us from other patients? Who put shapes and colors on office chairs, the draperies, added texture and hue to office cubicles? It's in these spaces that the artistry and genius of Ruth Adler Schnee reveals itself. The Adler family fled to Detroit, having been victims of Hitler's Germany. In 1939, Ruth received tremendous encouragement from her art teachers at Cass High School and received a scholarship to the Rhode Island School of Design and a fellowship at Cranbrook Academy of Art.
As we look back on the history of architecture and design in the 20th century, one of the most important chapters of it is a movement that we call modernism, which had its beginnings really with the Bauhaus in Germany. It was founded in 1919 by an architect by the name of Walter Gropius, whose initial goal was to combine the crafts and the fine arts together. Among the instructors that Gropius brought with him to the Bauhaus was the Swiss painter Paul Klee. Paul Klee taught the preliminary course where young students would learn about color theory, materials, relationships. Today, he and his colleagues at the Bauhaus are amongst the most sought-after artists of the 20th century. A Paul Klee, depending on the particular one, may go at auction for $3, $5, $7 million.
I was 13, 14. My parents were very active in the artistic community in Düsseldorf, and asked Paul Klee, who was a friend of my mother's through the Bauhaus, to come to the academy in Düsseldorf. And my dad found who was active in real estate and financial advising, found a house down the street from us for the Klees to live in. And I have to give a little family joke here because the Clays could not afford to pay him the commission for finding that house. And Paul Clay said to my dad, you can have any of my paintings, just pick one. And my dad's famous words were, I cannot feed my children with your paintings. So, much to my dismay, I don't have a Clay.
For a young woman that wanted to enter the fields of architecture and design, the odds certainly would have been stacked against her. However, one door that would have opened a little bit more easily would have been that of textile design. Ruth chose this path and then immediately transformed it, creating some of the most memorable textiles of the 20th century.
This is what I loved, and I really followed my dream. Actually, purist architects who want 3 shades of gray were very much against my designs, but I loved the bold shapes and colors, and I just pursued that.
If the Bauhaus was the center of modern architecture in Europe, Detroit was its birthplace in the United States. Building on the legacy of Albert Kahn, Detroit in the period right after World War II saw the development of 2 of the most important architecture firms in the United States. Eros Arnon established his own firm in 1950, designing such buildings as the St. Louis Arch and the Dulles International Airport outside of our nation's capital. However, his first major project was for General Motors, designing the General Motors Technical Center here in Warren, Michigan. He brought many of his Cranbrook friends with him on the project, including Ruth Adler Schnee, whose textiles were incorporated into many of the spaces.
Frank Lloyd Wright, and I worked with him on the Smith House, the Affleck House, and the house here that is on 7 Mile and Parkside. He did not like women, that was for sure. But he listened. And when I could explain exactly why I was recommending certain layouts, he listened. And I stressed always that a client must have a word in it because they're going to live in this space. And so that, I think, helped in working with Wright. On the other hand, it did not work with Yamazaki. Yami was totally into his own ideas, and he did not want anyone interfering.
The Yami that Ruth, of course, is referring to is Minoru Yamasaki, whose buildings here in Detroit include the Michigan Consolidated Gas Company, now known as 1 Woodward Avenue, and many buildings for the Wayne State University campus, including the McGregor Conference Center.
The problem I had with Yami was that he would not allow paintings to be hung. And I think it's so important for people to live with art and paintings. We had many arguments.
He's probably best known for the Twin Towers that he designed for New York City, the World Trade Center.
Actually, I specified the interior finishing materials of the lobby. And then, of course, when I saw that plane drive into the building, I was totally hysterical.
This corner 50 years ago was teeming with people. Hudson's department store, just down the street, had 33 levels and more than 2 million square feet of retail space. It was a major hub and destination for Detroiters. Just over my shoulder, Ruth Adler Schnee and her husband, Edward Schnee, opened their retail store. Adler Schnee was the store for contemporary home furnishings and decorating ideas. All the while customers were upstairs, Ruth was in the basement creating her designs. The car center is located kitty corner from the former Adler Schnee location on Harmony Park. After 38 years, it was our privilege to welcome Ruth back to the neighborhood. With months of preparation, we were able to mount the largest exhibition of this talented Detroiter's work ever. Hundreds of Schnee-designed textiles, graphics, and photographs span 2 floors and more than 6,000 square feet of exhibition space. What was truly remarkable about opening night were the number of people that came up to Ruth and said, "I used to be a customer at Adler Schnee. We loved it."
Ruth has been a pioneer not only in defining the modern look of architectural interiors, but also in redefining post-war America's sense of public space. As a woman who broke through barriers in a male-dominated field, as a Detroiter who helped shape the international sensibility, her story speaks to the value of inclusiveness, to the entrepreneurial spirit, and to the profound role that arts play in nurturing our souls.
I'm very grateful. I have been extremely lucky. I've been lucky to have had a background that prepared me for this. I've had a wonderful marriage, a wonderful partnership with my husband, and I just wish everybody had that kind of a life. It was difficult going through Nazi Germany because we went through the Holocaust. I lost my entire family, but I'm very grateful I've had the experiences that I've had.
You can learn more about Ruth Adler Schnee and all the artists featured here today on DetroitPerforms.org. Now, let's check out some upcoming events happening in and around the D. To discover more events in Greater Detroit, visit ixity.com. Two friends are striving to minimize waste and environmental impact in their craft and lifestyle. In order to do that, they have developed alternate power sources for hand-making wooden eyeglasses.
My partner Dave started Featherwood Frames maybe 5 years ago.
Shipping on the top, but it's where we'd sand it out anyway. My glasses broke, and thought I'd try and fix them myself, and they turned out pretty well, and it kind of turned into a business.
I was really into his glasses and joined him, started working.
I was doing woodworking and general carpentry at the time, and was pretty burnt out with that. I was using scrap wood that normally would be discarded or too small for most people, and Brett's help allowed me to further make the pedal power machines or the bike power machines.
The big attraction, more than eyeglasses or anything, was the process, the ethics surrounding it. I was really into that idea. Before I got into this stuff, I was working with sustainable agriculture, and it just seemed like a great fit. I think sustainability is, a huge issue. We live our lives in a certain way. I haven't had a license in 7 years, for example, and I live in a camper. So it'd be weird to come to work and not practice what we preach in that sense.
In the winter, we use a wood stove, and in the summer, we crank open the windows as best we can, and we collect the rain in rain barrels, and we don't have running water out here, so we use that for watering our garden or filtering it to drink or using it to steam bend the wood.
I'm ready to eat those, dude.
I really enjoy mechanics and making kinetic art, so incorporating that with woodworking and making glasses was a perfect marriage of the two. I've been interested in technologies that bring people together rather than alienate them and separate them from other people. To use our bike-powered tools requires Brett and I to be here together, and one person's pedaling, the other person's using the tool, which in some sense is really inefficient because we have to coordinate our schedules to be together, but in another sense it's fostered a great friendship between the two of us.
We steam bend and glue to make plywood, and then through various stages we cut sunglass frames and eyeglass frames on pedal-powered machines. We have a giant exercise bike with a 90-pound flywheel, and one of us gets on it and pedals like crazy, and the other one operates the tool. There's no electricity involved, it's just direct drive power.
The first time we tried the machine, I was pedaling and I did it and I thought I was gonna pass out. I was so tired. I didn't realize how out of shape I was, I guess. And I got really down, man, what am I doing trying to make a business around this Herculean feat? But then the next time it was a lot easier, and now it's so much easier and it's healthier, and I feel healthier as well.
We still use some electricity in other machines, but the goal is to use as little as possible, with the idea of having a model of sustainable production methods. That's really the heart of our business more than anything.
I've had so many countless people say, you should just get a CNC machine, those are so much faster, and once you figure out the investment, you can make it work out and make hundreds of glasses a month. And I usually just nod and yeah, I could do that, but it's a kind of a different paradigm in what we're trying to work within. I mean, I've been surprised that we've been able to make glasses as long as we have, because the goal isn't to make 1,000 glasses or 10,000 glasses and retire off of money from glasses. The goal is to just continue making art, continue doing it in the unique way that we are, and that affords us opportunities to not only make glasses but to work on other projects using scrap or otherwise discarded wood and bike-powered machines. It's definitely developed us as glasses makers, but as individuals and as artists as well, that want to live as low-impact life as possible.
Some people will outright just, say that it's impossible to run a business like that. And they might be right. I think our art here is in how we are trying to do things. You can sculpt and sand a piece of wood forever and make it look beautiful, but that's not really our intention necessarily. But if we can make these tools that can inspire other people to do similar things, then I would consider that an art.
I just believe, for whatever reason, maybe based on faith or maybe based on just how I view the world, that living in a way that doesn't steal resources from other people or from generations down the line, you'll be happier individually, and it's just better.
To find out more about Featherwood Frames, visit the Detroit Performs website. And that wraps it up for this edition of Detroit Performs. As always, for more arts and culture, head to DetroitPerforms.org, where you'll find featured videos, blogs, and information on upcoming arts events. Also, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. I'd like to thank the Birmingham-Bloomfield Art Center for hosting us today. Be sure to be one of the thousands of people who enter their doors each year to try their hand at an art class or just to appreciate the works displayed. Until next Tuesday, get out there and show the world how Detroit performs, y'all. I'm DJ Oliver. Thanks for watching, guys.
Funding for Detroit Performs is provided by the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs and the National Endowment for the Arts, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.